Good afternoon and welcome councillors and staff and other people who may be watching this podcast. Welcome to our August 2021 Ordinary Council meeting. We are in Zoom mode because of the COVID lockdown, as you'd be aware. I want to say to all Armidale residents at the outset that the council, my colleagues and I are wishing you all the very best at this most difficult time. We will come through this together. Let's look out for each other and everyone comply with the rules of the public health order, and we will come through this. I move now to the Civic Affirmation and Acknowledgement of Country, and today I ask the General Manager to do these, please.
Thanks, Mayor. The councillors of the Armidale region declare that they will undertake the duties of the office of councillor in the best interests of the community and faithfully and impartially carry out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions are vested in them to the best of their skill and judgment. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of and custodians of the land and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The Armidale regional community pays tribute to their love of land, love of people and love of culture.
You and the statement in relation to live streaming.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The meeting is being audio and video recorded as well as through this forum and Zoom, and the recordings of the non-confidential parts of the meeting will be made available on the internet. No other persons are permitted to record the meeting unless specifically authorised to do so. And would ask all of those present if you could please put your phones to silent or turn them off for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Today, I have two duties to perform right now. The first is to say farewell to Director Scott Mcdonald. This is his last meeting after being with Armidale Regional Council for the last 2 years. On your behalf, councillors, I'd like to thank Scott very much for his contribution over the last 2 years and wish him and thank him also for the personal support that he's given to me as Mayor, and wish him on your behalf all the very best for the future. So all the best, Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, and it's a pleasant duty to welcome Dan Boyce, our new Chief Officer Sustainable Development, a man who's been Sydney, Narrabri, Moree, and amongst his other skills, he's a free-fallen solo skydiver. I don't know how we'll use that attribute, but we'll think about something, won't we, Councillor Gladley? We welcome you aboard and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Apologies and application for leave of absence. We have a full complement, so that's not required. Item 4, disclosure of interests. Any councillors with interest to disclose, please? No hands going up. So thank you. We'll move on to the confirmation of the 28th July council meeting minutes. Looking for a mover of those minutes as being accurate. Someone raised their hands, Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Bailey, moving and seconding. Are there any concerns about the minutes? No. If not, I'll put the motion for adoption. All those in favour? To the contrary, carried. There's no mayoral minute. We have 4 notices.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, sorry, Councillor Marat has dropped out. I just need to send him the link so he can come back in.
Yes, sure. Would you have us wait, do you think?
If you don't mind, that would be...
Okay.
With respect, Mr. Mayor, I pressed the yes button to indicate my assent to the last motion regarding the minutes. Was that what you were looking for?
Yes, everybody should have pressed the green tick. Yeah, maybe I got a bit ahead of myself there, but I didn't detect any opposition. So we are waiting for Councillor Marat to rejoin us. And when he does, we'll move to item 7.1, which is Councillor Robinson's notice of motion. James, the more people, principally staff, that are joining us, the smaller becomes everybody's photo.
Where are you, mate?
The harder it is to see the little hands and ticks and things. But anyway, I'll
He's
have
just
to-
sent you another link.
I mean, Ian, with great respect, Ian, there's no reason why we can't do that for yes and that for no or something as a double thing to help you.
all right, okay.
I mean, we could go that for no. That's a
Yeah.
pretty obvious no.
Yeah, let's
I mean-
see how we go for a while.
Okay. But I mean, it's a possibility. If it gets
We've got Dorothy, we've got Councillor Robinson back. We're still waiting on Andrew to come back in. He's dropped out for some reason.
I've spoken to Andrew. He is trying to get back in. He's been sent the new link and he's trying to get back in.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Barley.
I think we possibly shouldn't be voting at the moment till he gets back in, even to move motions, perhaps.
Excuse me, Councillor O'Brien, I'm well aware of that. The meeting is in limbo for a second until he comes
Okay,
back.
no worries.
Well, I ring him back to see what's going on.
Just thinking, if I ring him and he can listen in, might
won't be
another way.
enough. It's not,
Mhm.
with great respect, I think we have to all be visible on the screen.
Okay. Well,
I'll ring him and see what's going on.
yeah, thanks, Councillor.
I can't get it to hook back up again. I got the link from James. I hit the accept button. It went into the date thing. I pressed on the thing. It just comes up. It's wanting codes and all sorts of stuff to get in there.
It's wanting James. It's wanting.
Your notice of motion, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. And I'm going to try, as Annette Killar says, to actually add a clause E.
I need you to move a motion.
Yeah, okay, I'll move the motion with the addition of a clause E, and that clause is encourage members of the New England Joint Organisation of Councils to write similar letters.
Encourage
So,
members of the NEJO to write similar letters.
yep.
You're moving that. I think Councillor O'Connor might be seconding it.
Correct.
Yes, seconding it. I'm wondering whether there's any opposition, first of all. Just raise your hand physically. No, there's no opposition that I'm aware of. Do you need to speak to the motion, Councillor Robinson? It looks like it's unanimous.
Yeah, I'd still like to speak to the motion.
Yes, well, I'll let you speak briefly.
Okay, and I would just like to acknowledge that this was a joint motion by myself, Councillor O'Connor and Councillor O'Brien. And just to speak very, very fairly briefly, that the reason why we should encourage all our politicians to support this motion is because renewables are the cheapest form of electricity, and with our renewable energy zone, it will bring jobs and growth to our region. We've all experienced a foretaste of what's to come with global overheating. That's the worst drought and the worst bushfires in recorded history, which are causing enormous financial losses and social disruption. And we also know that the Australian Medical Association, the insurance industry, the Reserve Bank of Australia, the Climate Council, and prominent members of our Defence Force have all called for strong and effective action on global warming. And the IPCC report makes this abundantly clear that there's a problem. It's an emergency because the rise in global temperatures will not stop even when we get down to zero emissions. Temperatures will continue to increase because of the greenhouse gases already in the atmosphere. And we might even see faster temperature rises because of feedback mechanisms such as melting glaciers and polar ice. And so that the heat currently reflected back into space instead will warm our planet. And the release from permafrost and undersea ice of methane, which is a very powerful greenhouse gas in the short term, and causes about 80 times as much warming as the same amount of CO2. And if that wasn't enough to wreck our economy, we've now just heard of the European Union's carbon border adjustment mechanism, or border tax, which is a taste of what's to come. Just another reminder that we have to take climate action seriously. The choice is clear, and this is what we have to make clear to our politicians. We have to reduce our emissions to defend our exports and seize new opportunities, or just cling to the stubborn climate policy at the cost of our economic competitiveness. So let's do this, and perhaps at the same time encourage our governments to put the public interest first, not vested interest like coal, oil, or in previous times even tobacco or the wood heating lobbies. So I commend this motion to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Melissa, Part E should read, encourage member councils
Of the
New England
Joint
Organisation of Councils, capital O for it, yes, of councils, to also write to the Prime Minister and the local member. Also write to the Prime Minister and the local federal member and their local federal member, because I think there's another one for wider.
Yeah.
Local federal member. Okay, so we're all in accord. Councillor O'Connor, there's no opposition. I'm being very generous in letting one speaker. I'll be generous again. It's a serious issue, but I'd like us to move on shortly. Over to you, Councillor O'Connor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would simply like to support Councillor Robinson's motion by quoting from the Farmers for Climate Action press release from 9th of August 2021, where Angus Emmett, who is a long-reach grazier from that organisation, said that real impactful climate action, including a plan to rapidly decarbonise this decade and achieve net zero emissions before 2050, is a win for all Australians. Our trading partners are moving and we are being left behind. Mr. Emmett also said this is also a story of opportunity. With the right policy settings and investment, agriculture is one of the few industries that can become not just carbon neutral, but carbon positive, locking up more carbon than we emit. And I want to add this to this debate to say that this is a positive opportunity for our region, and we would therefore endorse this to the Deputy Prime Minister as well as the Prime Minister. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Brien also has her hand raised. I presume you're wanting to speak as well. I've allowed 2 speakers. The Code of Meeting Conduct, and there's no opposition, but I will allow it on this occasion, but I'm not going to do it all day. Councillor O'Brien.
I just wanted to say that it is council, that it's local councils that will be on the front line of some of the worst effects of climate change. And we've seen how it's affected our local area for flooding and drought and bushfires. So it'll be local council that'll be there helping people through the catastrophe. And so I implore, since Australia is now 200th in its action, in its countries acting on climate change, to implore our Deputy Prime Minister and our local member to please show much, much more enthusiasm about getting on board and to act urgently on this. Be a leader, don't be an obstacle to urgent change, and stand up and lead your community. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I think, yeah, okay, we go to our reactions and we press the green tick. Councillor O'Connor got a hand raised. No, she's got a tick. 5, 6 green ticks. It's carried unanimously. Item 7.2, notice of motion. Councillor O'Connor, your motion.
Can I have a point of
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Sorry to interrupt. To get Councillor Marat back in, apparently we need to start a new meeting. He's been removed somehow and can't get back into this meeting.
So we all opt out and get sent things and start again?
It's in the chat, the link. So we have to...
He knows that, but it hasn't worked.
Yeah, well, this is a new link.
Okay, we're in a meeting and I'm chairing it. We've got to make a decision whether we go out and allow Councillor Marat to come back in. It'll take 10 minutes, I suppose. I think it's the right thing to do. Okay.
Yep.
Let's all leave the meeting and we'll await a fresh link from you, James, will we?
Mel and Jess will send it through.
Okay.
Will that be, excuse me, will that be on our calendar or in our email account?
It'll look, yeah, go for your email, in your email.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cheerio.
And or you can get it now from the chat.
Anyway, okay. Thank you. Right. So many experts.
please. Where are you going, Councillor Robinson? Oh dear. Resumed after technical difficulties at 4:40 p.m. and we move to 7.2. Your notice of motion, Councillor O'Connor, would you like to move it? You're moving it, I presume, yes? Is it seconded? Is it seconded? It's seconded by Councillor Robinson. Your motion, Councillor O'Connor.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I bring this motion forward to my fellow councillors, and I'm most grateful for the comprehensive answers to Councillor Robinson's question on notice in relation to this that's recorded at the back of the agenda for this month's meeting. I've read that carefully, and a search of that and also a perusal of some of the newspaper clippings at the time indicate to me that there's been no direct question ever put to government other than to Ms. Wendy Mulligan back in 2017 in relation to what is going on as between Hunter New England Health and the New South Wales Health in relation to funding hydrotherapy pills across the state. I would like to amend this motion in a very minor way, simply by deleting the last word area and just saying within the Hunter New England and other health districts in New South Wales. Does that make sense?
Yes. Melissa, are you picking that up, please? Then the Hunter, New England.
And other
health areas of New South Wales.
Yeah, or other New South Wales health districts. They're called districts, I think.
Take your cursor up to health on the last line.
Last line.
Last line.
Yeah, it's not in the middle.
No, not up there. Down the bottom. Okay, take out area and add in and other health
districts in New South Wales.
Districts in New South Wales. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is the seconder agreeable to that? Councillor Robinson, are you agreeable to the change? Councillor Robinson?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you. Back to you, Councillor O'Connor.
Look, the only record I can find of any public question being put to the New South Wales Government or New South Wales Health and Hunter New England Health District Management is an interview that was done by Rachel Baxter of the Armidale Express back in about, I think it was July 2017. She had an interview with Wendy Mulligan, who was then the Hunter New England Health General Manager for Northern Tablelands, and Ms. Mulligan was reported in the Armidale Express as saying that hydrotherapy is actually not a core requirement of public health services. And then when she was asked why, she replied, "I can't comment on that. It's just not a part of what we do." Now, as far as I'm aware, that's the only situation where there's been any consideration of what to me is the nub of the problem we have, which is not so much the cost and the capability of Armidale Regional Council to get funding for the building of the infrastructure, but the problem, as I understand it, that was presented by peer review of the project scope and presented to temporary administrator Mr. Viv May back in November 2020 was the ongoing operational costs, and it was the sustainability of that was the issue. Now, I've taken it upon myself to do a little bit of a search around the state, and it does appear to be quite an interesting question in that it does appear that in many cases, New South Wales Health does fund very generously hydrotherapy facilities in other health districts. I still can't, or I haven't got to the bottom of what's going on in Tamworth, but that would appear to be a New South Wales Health facility there. But for example, the Graithwaite Rehabilitation Centre, which has a state-of-the-art hydrotherapy pool attached to the Ryde Hospital, was opened on Thursday the 19th of September 2013 by the Minister for Health then, Gillian Skinner MP. It was a $41 million purpose-built facility, will herald a new era for the delivery of rehabilitation care to the communities of Ryde and the North Shore. So look, without dragging this on, I think it's entirely in the interests of our community that we put the question fair and square, where it was left off by Ms. Mulligan, 4 years ago, when she said no comment. I think we need to ask that question directly, and that's the sole purpose of this notice of motion. I really do hope.
Councillor, thank you. Your time is up. Would the seconder wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Robinson.
Yes, I want to speak just very, very briefly and say that this is an example of cost shifting. And it really is something where we should be asking the Director of Hunter and Newlington Health and the Minister for Health, as well as our local member, Adam Marshall, to explain why we have to put up with this cost shifting or do without hydrotherapy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bailey, your hand is up. I've had two speakers for. You're speaking against. You're on mute, Councillor Bailey. You're on mute, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Bailey, you're still on mute. That's better.
The point that I'd make is that my research...
Excuse me, Councillor, I want to know whether you're speaking against the motion. I'm not going to allow people to speak on all day if there's no opposition. So are you speaking opposed to the motion, or are you asking a question?
No, let it go.
Okay, thank you. There's no opposition. I propose to put the motion. All those in favour, go to your reactions and your ticks. Green tick. I see 1, 2, 5 green ticks. So I presume there's 2 against. No, 6 green ticks. So it seems that Councillor O'Brien's against and 6 in favour. Okay.
I've put a tick.
Now you've got a tick. It's now 7. Come on, councillors. We've now got it carried unanimously. Thank you. 7.3, live streaming. Councillor Robinson, your notice of motion.
Thank you. Well, I think we can be just very, very brief in this. This is an important way of improving accountability and transparency. If we're having a council meeting, then what we really need to know is what the public think of our motions, and we should make sure that everybody else knows that, so that when in the formal meeting when we have our decision making process, everybody knows what we've listened to and what we've heard and what the public thinks as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I've heard in not asking for a second. Councillor O'Brien, are you seconding the motion?
Yeah, yes, I thought I was.
Yes. Sorry, yes, Councillor O'Brien seconded the motion.
Okay, can I speak?
Yes. Is there any opposition, by the way? There doesn't appear to be opposition. Councillor O'Brien, you're the final speaker. Thank you.
I think our have your say speaker probably summed it up best, that the important aspect of democratic government is accessibility to decision making, which means people are able to tune in and see how decisions are made. Transparency about how the issues are decided and what are the issues at stake, and community engagement. I think they're all very, very strong arguments for a strong local government decision-making process. So I strongly support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I propose to put the motion. Is that okay? Yes. Putting the motion. All those in favour? Ticks. Those against? I see 5 for, and Councillors Tiley and Galatly against. Declare the motion carried 5 votes to 2. Item 7.4, Healthy Winter Air Strategy, notice of motion, Councillor Robinson.
Well, I'm going to propose an amendment which I've put in the chat. So I hope our secretary can take it out of the chat and actually, yeah, so it's there with, that's fine. So I just want to speak to that motion.
Just a moment, please.
Yeah, we need a second.
We're not all with you. So you're okay with the amendment in lieu of the three-part notice of motion? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so well, you're moving the amendment as the substantive motion.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and I see Councillor Bailey's name there. I presume that he's supporting you on this.
I believe so.
That's correct, Councillor Bailey. So I'm acknowledging Councillor Robinson and Councillor Bailey as the mover and seconder of the new motion. Over to you, Councillor Robinson.
With respect, Mr. Mayor, can that be read out? I can barely see it.
Well, it was emailed to everybody.
Oh, yeah.
No, of course, no talk across the table, please. James, Mr. Roncon, could you read that out for everybody, please?
I can't see it either, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'll read it. Part A, that Armidale Regional Council advocate, it's the same as the original Part A, right? Advocate to undertake a pilot, etc., etc. And Part B, which replaces the former Parts B and C, is, you have to scroll down for me, Melissa, that the Healthy Winter Air Project seek to employ a specialist term education officer with the grant money to undertake a major education project to showcase alternative home heating solutions and reduce emissions from existing wood heaters. That's now the substantive motion. Councillor Robinson, it's over to you.
Well, what I'd like to do is just read out a submission a little while ago by a health professional who lived in South Armidale. This is what it says. From 2 years of age, my daughter suffered respiratory illness every year. It started in early May each year, approximately 2 weeks after the wood fires were lit, and continued until the end of winter when the fire stopped. This occurred until my daughter was 12 years old, when we moved to a house above the smoke line. Since then, she has not suffered from the same respiratory illness. It just stopped. We did not have to go to the doctor or buy any more medication. During the same time, my son suffered from a persistent cough during winters. This also stopped when we moved house. Our previous house was heated by a wood fire. Our new house is not. Otherwise, nothing changed. We have had a good diet and our children participated in several sports. The only thing that changed was our moving out of the house that had a wood heater in an area that was in a heavy smoke zone into a non-wood heated house out of the smoke zone. And this typifies Armidale's problem. We know that when Launceston reduced its wood smoke, deaths in winter from lung diseases fell by 28%. And deaths from cardiovascular diseases, that's heart attacks and strokes, by 20%. And I would have thought that trying to fix this problem and seek funds for a healthy winter air strategy would allow us to see similar improvements here. And really, really do we need them? And we see time and time again on Facebook comments like, why don't you just move house? But think about who we are asking to move. We're asking people with heart and lung conditions, families with young or unborn children, those with asthma, diabetes and dementia to move house. And remember that sometimes heart attacks and strokes come on without warning. We really can't expect those who don't know they're at risk to move. But the effect of that on families can be really, really devastating. So I support whatever we can do to solve this problem. And even though this amended motion is exactly what we did in the years 2000 to 2002 or whereabouts, where we had a lady called Sophie Schmidt who was employed by council as a wood smoke education officer. But sadly, to the best of my knowledge, despite all those efforts, our pollution hasn't improved since 1999, when the AHHA became involved in the debate about wood smoke, making incorrect claims that new wood heaters were 90% cleaner than the existing ones. And today we still have equally misleading and incorrect claims. I know for a fact that the Canterbury One standard in Christchurch, New Zealand, is the sort of standard we in Armidale should be aiming for, or wherever wood heaters are allowed. It's really, really heaps better than the average new Australian heater. So if you don't want to hear somebody claiming in 2041, 20 years from now, that the health of our residents is still being ravaged by wood smoke, let's be guided by the science, not vested interest who put profit before public health. Because remember, clean air is just as important as clean water. Just think what a project here could do for our region to help us upgrade our housing so we've got better insulation, better heating, clean, affordable heating. It will provide money for local businesses to install insulation and upgrade heating and make this a really, really attractive place to live. And cleaning up our air pollution would also make it a magnet to attract people here, instead of having to tell the media that we don't want to solve the problem. So technology has actually come to the rescue, because we've seen similar improvements in reverse cycle air conditioners as we have in rooftop solar cells. Good systems now for solar cells are twice as powerful for half the price. And reverse cycle is also much more efficient than 5 years ago. And in other countries, they're called heat pumps and can deliver 5 times as much heat to the home as they use in electric power. And that means 4 units of heat are coming from air, renewably by the sun, for every 5 units of energy delivered. So this research the research I did wasn't intended to make Armidale look bad, but to provide the best possible evidence to justify our need for funding to other levels of government. And it's been our inability and unwillingness to look for funding in the past that's led to this problem. We have a vocal minority who just doesn't want to know about the 20% reduction in deaths from heart attacks and strokes and the 28% reduction in deaths from lung diseases in Launceston.
Thank you, Councillor. Your time is up.
Yeah, well, I'll just finish to say that if you care about the health of our community and want to make Armidale the best possible place to live, please support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Bailey?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. There's 2 problems. Regardless of whatever we can do to improve the air quality in Armidale, we can't force people to take wood heaters out of their homes. So we still need an education project so that people that choose to have a wood heater in their house learn to better use it. And I've also proposed in discussions that we talk to Barbecues Galore and Bunnings to help educate and show ways forward. I've proposed that we buy a wood heater and also show people the difference between dampening a heater down at night and not dampening a heater down at night. And also propose that we look at things like moisture meters, which I've talked to Councillor Gallatley about, so that when people buy a load of wood, they can ascertain the moisture level in the wood so that it burns more cleanly. So regardless of what we might want to do, we don't have the legislative power to force people out of wood heaters. So we've got an education component here, and we also will showcase how you can better use your wood fire, and then that education process will lead to hopefully a reduction in emissions. I agree it's a challenge, but for an education city to say that education doesn't work is really quite hypocritical. We are an education city. We've got some of the highest quality of academics and intelligent people in this community. We've got to keep trying and change our methods so that we can find ways to show people how to better use their wood heater. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there opposition? There being no opposition, I presume we're unanimous. I therefore propose to put the motion. All those in favour, please record your tick. Do we have 7 ticks? Councillor, we do. Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We move now to the 8 series, and I'm going to call these items. Item 8.1, Integrated Planning and Reporting Delivery Program, 4th quarter. Item 8.2, Council Meeting Cycle. I'm trying to look at the business paper plus look at you folks, so it's difficult. 8.3, Events on Public Roads Policy. 8.4, More Market Operations Policy. 8.5, Private Works Policy. 8.6, Grazing Permits on Road Reserves Policy. And 8.7, Management of Road Reserves Policy. No items called. I'll take a motion to adopt all items 8.1 to 8.7 inclusive. It's been moved by Councillor Morat. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Galatly. I presume there's no opposition. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? To the contrary, carried. It's carried unanimously.
Hang on.
Well, as nothing was called, I presume it was carried unanimously. But anyway, if you want to put your ticks up, we'll do that. That's fine. 7 ticks, carried unanimously. Moving to the 9 series. Item 9.1, Local Strategic Planning Statement Implementation.
I'd like to call one thing.
9.1, called by Councillor Robinson. That's the merging of the DCPs. 9.2, the Armidale Regional LEP planning proposal for public exhibition, the timing of that. 9.3, the Armidale Regional Local Environmental Plan, the Amalgamated Council status comparison. 9.4, update on alterations for parking time limits within the Armidale CBD. And 9.5, the cash and investments report. Thank you, councillors. I'll take a motion to adopt items 9.2, 3, 4 and 5. Councillor Morat and Councillor Bailey. Any opposition? No opposition. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? 6 in favour, 7 in favour, carried unanimously. Item 9.1, called by Councillor Robinson. Over to you, Councillor.
Well, I'm happy to move the motion.
Thank you. That's on page 27 of your business papers. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Robinson. Is there a seconder somewhere? Is there a seconder to the motion? It's seconded by Councillor Morat. Thank you. Councillor O'Brien, I'm sorry. Councillor O'Brien seconding your motion. Councillor Robinson?
It was really a question rather than anything else, and it might actually have applied to 9.2 rather than 9.1, but I just wanted to point out one of the important issues for our local environment plans from our agreement.
Yep, frame it as a question, please, Councillor.
Yeah, well, it's just a comment rather than a question. Which I'll speak to the motion.
Thank you.
And what I'd like to see when we do revise our local environment plans is that I just wanted to point out that we should really do what we've already got in the green print, is that we should revise them to encourage residential development within easy cycling and walking distance of major employment and business areas, and facilitate residential living within the CBD of Armidale. I just wanted to make that point while we are discussing local environment plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The seconder doesn't wish to speak, I presume? No? Is there any opposition? The motion on page 27 is to receive and note the report. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? I have 7 green ticks. It's carried unanimously. So that completes the 9 series. We now go to the 10 series. Before we call them, I'm going to go to 10.6, and I'm aware from each of you that we are of a like mind to defer item 10.6, the biodiversity offsets, to have a further information workshop session. I'll take a motion to defer for a workshop session. Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Robinson. I think it's a procedural motion, doesn't need to be spoken about today. But before I put the motion, I'd encourage each councillor to, if they've got questions, to get them in writing to the General Manager as soon as possible. And hopefully we can have a good workshop information session very shortly and bring this matter back to the next council meeting. So we're ready to vote. All those in favour of deferring? I have 7 ticks. It's carried unanimously. Thank you. I now call the 10 series, the remainder of 10.1, Armidale Regional Council Social Housing Waste Strategy.
I call that one, please.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien is calling that one. Item 10.2, Demerit Dam Safety Upgrade Project Progress Report. It'll be very helpful if you do turn your mic on and indicate you want to speak, because I'm looking at my business paper, trying to look at the screen at the same time. That will help, thanks. So 10.3, removal of high risk AIF memorial poplar trees and Waterfall Way. 10.4, public exhibition of road closure of unnamed road off Kempsey Road. 10.5, Armidale and Guyra alcohol-free zones. 10.7, appointment of New South Wales Public Works Advisory to project manage the Creeklands restoration.
Mr Mayor, could I call 10.3? I'm sorry, I was looking at something. 10.3, could I call?
Councillor Bailey calling 10.3, 10.7. Councillor O'Connor, you calling 10.7? Thumbs up.
If not, I'll call it.
Councillor O'Brien, you're on mute. Your hand is up. Do you wish to?
Are you calling me?
Councillor O'Connor, are you calling 10.7?
Yes.
Thank you. So O'Connor's called 7. 10.8, request to waive fees, Guyra Community Hall. 10.9, acceptance of waste from outside Armidale Regional Council local government area policy for adoption. 10.10, cemeteries operation management policy. 10.11, urban streetscape policy for adoption. And 10.12, memorials policy for adoption. So I take a motion to adopt the 10 series with the exception of 10.1, 10.3 and 10.7, and with 10.6 already having been dealt with. The motion moved by Councillor Morat, seconded by Councillor Gallatley. All those in favour? Of 6-4 and Councillor Bailey against.
No, I'm sorry, Mr Mayor.
Okay, it's carried unanimously. We go back to 10.1, Armidale Regional Council Social Housing Waste Strategy, Councillor O'Brien, page 49.
Could I also move this motion, please, Mr Mayor?
Just trying to find it. That's what I was about to ask you. You willing to move the 4-part motion?
Yes.
You are. Good on you. Terrific. Councillor Robinson, will you second it?
I just
Yes.
I just need a seconder first.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Seconding it. It's your motion, Councillor O'Brien.
I'd just like to heartily support this initiative and congratulate everyone involved, really, and especially the idea of a proposed partnership with Homes North Community Housing. I've long heard complaints, and I suppose you all have, about difficulties for disposing of waste for people who don't have access to sort of the capacity to actually take their stuff to the tip, whether it's lack of transport or where they live. And so they simply don't have the resources. So it's that itself is bad for the health and safety of the community and bad for the health and safety of not only the people involved, but the whole of community. And the council ends up having to deal with the garbage anyway. So it's a proactive and pragmatic as well as a compassionate initiative. I suppose I I'm very heartily happy about it because it's a caring for the least privileged in the community, and these are the people I most wish to represent. I'd like to add that it's also enacted with input from the people from the community, and so that bodes very well for the project. And I just want to thank everybody involved for this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. The second, Councillor Robinson, wish to speak?
I just support everything that Councillor O'Brien has said. Thank you.
Okay, is there any opposition? No, not seeing any opposition. I propose to put the motion. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.3, the AIF Memorial Poplars, Waterfall Way, called by Councillor Bailey.
Mr Mayor, I'll move the motion, but in so doing, I would like to encourage, as I've stated to some of you already, that we treat this as a community project and encourage
just before you go on, Councillor Morat is seconding. I have a seconder. Keep going, Councillor Bailey.
That we encourage community participation in the project, and that be the Ex-Services Club, Legacy or Rotary or Lions or Quota. This is a community project. Those trees have been significant part of the Armidale landscape for a long, long while. And I think we should try and maintain community involvement rather than just looking to council to solve the problem. And I think most of the groups would be interested in being part of the project. So that's all I'm encouraging, that the General Manager directs his staff to ensure that we do have some community participation in the project.
Thank you, Councillor. Does the seconder wish to speak?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? No opposition. I put the motion in 5 parts on your screen. All those in favour? I have 7 ticks. Declare the motion carried unanimously. 10.7, the New South Wales Public Works Advisory in relation to the Creeklands restoration, called by Councillor O'Connor. I've got that on the screen now. It's a 4-part recommendation. Are you prepared to move that, Councillor O'Connor?
I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Second somewhere, please. Just looking for a second.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to add 1 paragraph.
Just a second. I don't have a seconder yet. Yes, I do. Councillor Robinson is seconding it. It's moved and seconded, and you want to add a paragraph?
Yeah, just
D.
E.
Right.
That the General Manager ensure the governing body is informed of community consultation progress in relation to this project or something like that. Anyway.
In relation to this project.
Yeah.
In relation to this project, no? That's it.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure that's acceptable to the seconder, Councillor Robinson. Yeah.
That's acceptable, and I would also like to add a paragraph F.
Well, yes, okay, it's not your motion, but
I can suggest it, and then we'll see if the mover.
Okay, well, your suggested addition is a part F, is it? Okay.
It's a part F.
Okay.
New South Wales Public Works Advisory Project Management is encouraged to use as many local contractors as possible, or as practical.
Project management be encouraged to use local contractors
wherever
practicable. Yeah, as much as possible, whatever.
Yeah, or as much as possible.
As much as possible. Sorry, Mel.
Yeah, I'm happy with that amendment.
As much as, and thank you, Mover, Councillor O'Connor, as much as possible. So it's now gone from 4 parts to 6 parts. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Do you wish to speak, Councillor O'Connor, to your motion?
Just very briefly for the benefit of the live stream, and that is that paragraph 6 on page 84, you'll notice that there's a statement at the foot of the page that says the project manager will be expected to develop a communications plan in consultation with council to inform the community about project delivery. Council is bound by the New South Wales Government's DPIE Public Spaces Legacy Program guidelines, which is the funding body for this, this project, which require council to seek approval of any proposed communications. So I just wanted to say that I think we've now, with the Amendment E, we've now closed the loop so that the governing body is going to be kept aware of what the comms plan is, and clearly the New South Wales Government's DPIE want to be kept abreast and want to in fact have we've agreed to seek their approval for any proposed communications. So I think we've closed the loop in terms of everybody knowing what's going on, and by that means we as the governing body or the governing body that is then elected will have the capacity to ensure that there is, you know, excellent community consultation throughout this project. And I think that should then answer any concerns that were raised in the Have Your Say section about the community being kept involved and aware of how the project's progressing. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. There's a second who wish to speak. Councillor Robinson? No?
No, I'm happy, thank you.
Okay, thank you. No opposition. Therefore, I propose to put the motion in 6 parts on your screen. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Councillor Bailey. Councillor Bailey against, is he? No, he's not. We have it carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I'm going to call the business paper from here to 14. Item 11.1, the Gyra Preschool and Long Day Care Centre annual fee increases.
Call.
That's
I'm sorry, wrong one. Apologies, leave it. No, it's not a call.
Right, so 11.1's not called. 11.2, waiving family gap fees, Gyra Preschool. Neither are called. I'll take a motion to adopt 11.1 and 11.2. By consent, it's moved by Councillor Galatly and seconded by Councillor Morat. No opposition. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor 4, 6. Councillor Bailey, are you in favour or against? We have it carried unanimously. Committee reports, the Traffic Advisory Committee. Is there someone willing to move the adoption of those minutes? Councillor Morat, seconded by Councillor Galatly. Any opposition? Put the motion. All those in favour? Whoops, I've pressed the wrong button. To the contrary, it's pretty weak. We've got 5. So in favour is Councillors Morat, Tiley, Galatly. I've now got, where's the 7th? Oh, there's, sorry, Councillor O'Connor, you moved to the bottom of my screen in incognito. So the 7, so that's carried. Questions on notice. There's the question's been there for your information. Now, in relation to 15.1, the tender, I propose if no one wants to discuss the detail that's in the attachments, we can adopt this in open council. That's my view. But is there anyone who wants to go into confidential to discuss any aspect of this? No? Thank you, councillors. Well, therefore, on your screen, you have a motion, you have a recommendation, I should say, whoops, slow down. Thank you, Mel. It's in 3 parts. Councillor O'Connor's moving it and Councillor Galatly seconding the motion on the screen. No opposition. I put the motion. All those in favour? To the contrary? Carried unanimously. Councillors, that concludes the August ordinary monthly meeting of the council. Thank you for your cooperation under fairly difficult circumstances. Again, Scott Mcdonald, I wish you farewell and all the best for the future. And thank you all for your attendance, and say au revoir.
Thank you, Mayor.
Can we have a drink now?